Hello there. Welcome to Strive's Talking Points, and in this video we're going to talk about an Axios story as the conversation about the border wall heats up yet again. Trump has recently diverted funding from FEMA. Please click on my little icon. You can see that video. It was posted just before this one, and we're going to discuss now the Axios story and some kind of my opinion, my take on that. And as always, before I begin, I'd like to say please like, share, comment, and subscribe so that I can kind of get your opinions on this stuff. It is me reaching out with my opinion, discussing things I see in what I believe is a calm, rational manner, and just want to get feedback from other people about it. And also, since I am a tiny channel, YouTube generally doesn't recommend me at all, and I do get most of my views and my shares through Facebook and Google searches. So I'd like to kind of keep that up and kind of keep growing the audience here. From Axios, Steph W. Knight. Trump administration can't say when first section of new wall will be built. What? That sounds strange. So no new wall has been built yet? More than 2.5 years, sorry, that was me trying to be sarcastic in tone. I don't think it came off very well, but I'm going to leave it in. More than 2.5 years after President Trump took office with an ardent promise to build a wall along the southern border, his administration cannot tell us when it will add its first new mile of wall to a border area that already doesn't have pre-existing barriers. Now, pre-existing barriers is a very important thing. Here is a picture of a pre-existing barrier. Little piece of iron on the ground with this. You see those go on for miles, and from the picture you can easily see that someone can go under it, go over it very easily. There's actually another image of a man standing right next to it, and the way it's built, it actually has kind of steps. So if you come across, you can easily cross the border. You see the beams here. You know, very easy to cross this current stuff. I've seen dozens of images in the past where people have cut holes in the wire mesh fencing and just claimed through, and then in the areas around Southern California, the border people just go back up and they weld on a new section, which is then cut by someone later. Why it matters. The wall has been Trump's most iconic and polarizing promise. One he was willing to declare a national emergency and shut down the government for weeks over. So far in Trump's presidency, more than 60 miles of existing barriers and fences have been replaced with a new wall, called a Ballard Wall. That's kind of what everybody's wanting here, or what he's wanting, according to DHS security official. DHS has been referring to the replacement wall as new. Again, going from this little bitty stuff to an actual wall is a new wall, because I wouldn't call that a wall. I don't think anyone would. New, but to date, not a single mile of wall has been built where no previous barrier existed. Again, a barrier is anything. There's actually miles and miles of the wall where it's just a post every 4 feet. I have a little video on that in a minute, or a piece on that. The official did not provide an answer when asked when the first section of new wall would be built. Now, her definition of new versus someone else's definition of new is very different. Imagine if you put a fence around your yard, a wall, an actual one of those little wooden walls to go around. Beforehand, you had had this rock laying on your property line. And that rock, small rock, you could step over it. You know, it's just a little stone laying in your yard, and you said, that's my wall, that will keep people out, where anyone can step over it, walk around it. And then suddenly you put up a 10-foot fence. Very different. The fence would be new. It would be a new wall. My opinion only. The department is committed to confronting the humanitarian and security crisis at our border, stemming the flow of illegal or irregular migration, and protecting our rule of law and the American people from traffickers, child smugglers, transnational criminal organizations exploiting our system for profit, to profit from human misery and suffering, the DH official said. DHS. This is lost on Axios, apparently. What's next? The Trump administration says it expects to build 450 miles of border wall, which has typically consisted of tall steel slats. Call it the Ballard Wall. That's kind of what this type of wall is being referred to, where it's steel slats. Sometimes you're going to see these toppers on it, sometimes you won't, but all in all, it is a very tall piece of wall. In strategic locations by the end of 2020, according to the same official. DHS is currently replacing 124 miles of fencing with new wall, so she's called the new wall herself, El Paso, El Centro, Tucson sectors in mid-September. The government expects to start building additional 5 miles in the Yuma sector. The big picture. Most of the funding lawmakers have secured for Trump's border security demands have specifically excluded building a border wall where there was no existing barrier. So if you were in an area and there was a post every 4 feet, and that was meant to keep out illegals, or a fence that had holes cut in it, or the little cross beams I showed you earlier where it looked like it had steps on it for them to get over easier, they didn't want to do that. Democrats have opposed this funding, although a lot of the barriers that you saw in the past were funded via Clinton and Obama to keep people out because they knew it wouldn't work, but it sounded good. Again, my opinion, but if you look in depth at that stuff, it is what's been going on for years. Deeply frustrating the president, the parents. Trump is not our parent. One of the reasons this is just now starting, a Supreme Court decision has enabled Trump administration to begin building new wall with Pentagon funds through Trump's emergency declaration. Some of that money is now being used on border projects, the AP reported. So, Trump is finally able to build a wall after Congress wouldn't fund it by using the Pentagon and the Declaration of Emergency to have the Department of Defense and Pentagon fund it. Here's an interesting video I found. I'm going to turn the sound off for this. This man is showing the wall behind him. This is a fence. This is typical in the Lukeville, Arizona here. Now you see him coming through. You see the fence. You see the barbed wire. You see the posts. This fence looks to be about 8 foot tall. These little barriers here are behind him. I'm going to go through just a second here. You see they're clearly not connected to the fence. They're behind the fence, separate. These are called vehicle barriers. You've probably seen these outside of retail stores, malls, places like that, where they put these posts up every few feet to keep cars from being able to run into the building. Sometimes you just see the ones laying on the ground. Those are vehicle barriers. They're not meant to run into them with your car. They're meant to keep you from doing that. He's showing them because this is a spot where they're going to put up the 30-foot posts. They're going to go on for miles. In this video here, this is on his Arizona AZ Central, which is part of the USA Today group. He discussed this because there's only a few miles of this fencing, and if you go watch the videos on it, you'll see these have holes cut in them all over the place on the far west coast. However, once you go past those couple of miles, you end up with just these vehicle posts. You can see them there. They're just a regular post cut, and you see they're actually irregularly in height, just jammed into the ground quickly as possible to get it over with. Those are meant only to stop cars from crossing the border. They do not stop people from walking across. One of the big problems we have is people cross the border dehydrated, hoping they get run into the border patrol and get picked up immediately because they're dehydrated, they're emaciated, they're starving, they've caught some random disease, and they're about to die, which is one of the reasons we see a lot of deaths. Now, funding the wall, building this thing, has apparently already started to have some effect, as they say in the story we're going to read into here in just a minute, where migrant crossings have slowed over the summer. Again, this is from AZ Central. In the last year, the area just east of Lukeville had emerged as a popular crossing point for large groups of migrant families and minors. Smugglers would drop off the migrants along the Mexican highway, which runs parallel to the border. They would then walk a short distance past vehicle barriers and turn themselves into border agents. These previous barriers I've showed you, these little 3 and 4 foot tall posts, they just walk right past them because they're only made to stop cars and would enter the country. As summer heat increases, crossings through the area have slowed significantly. I hope that's because they're being discouraged to come into the country and they're not wanting to take the risk anymore. However, it's very possible that we're seeing an uptick in deaths on the Mexican side. Always possible, because as these people try and cross through the desert in the middle of summer, they're not ready for it. They're coming from various parts of the world where it's not like that, and they're dying. They're not ready for it. Agents haven't seen large groups in months, but said they continue to apprehend small number of migrants. Border Patrol officials pointed to risks of crossing such rugged terrain. In June, agents recovered the body of a 7-year-old girl from India who had gotten lost when she tried to cross the border with her mother. It's not just stopping people from Mexico. This lady's from India. Her daughter died in the desert because she decided not to take legal means to get into the country. She decided to just go to Mexico and then cross herself through probably finding these, I believe they call them coyotes, to bring her over with her daughter. Her daughter got lost. Most of these crossings are at night, and the daughter is now dead. If she had been able to immigrate legally, that would have been great. However, she was either denied or didn't even try. You see this with the African migrants that are now showing up in Texas in droves by the hundreds. We are not looking at just stopping Mexicans from coming in the country. This has become this massive international issue, and we really do need to do it. Regalo said the new barriers were intended to stop people from crossing through these areas. It's going to replace vehicle barriers, so there will actually be some structure. They're so that people can't just walk across the border, he said. So instead of just seeing this little post every few feet, you'll be confronted with this huge border wall. Again, as I've shown before in another video, here's what a large section of the border likes. This is the barrier that Axios is discussing. A very small, well, actually, I'd say that's probably about 5 foot tall, piece of metal sitting in the desert that you can go under, you can easily climb over. It's not inhibiting people. It's just showing you, hey, here's a border, duck your head under it and move on. It's now being replaced with this wall. Do you believe that a woman with her 7-year-old would walk up to a 30-foot high wall and just say, hey, we can climb this? No, people aren't going to try that. Not nearly as often. They're going to have to go to the ports of entry and actually try and enter the country. Maybe there will be gaps in the border in the next few years because it is a massively long border. However, closing these gaps with hundreds of miles of border wall, what are they saying here? 450 miles, now that the courts and Congress are no longer involved. This should stop illegal migration. This should stop the deaths. This should really be a barrier to keep people from trying to enter illegally. I was looking at some border wall pictures, and yeah, when you see these images, you see a picture here of the old wall. This is just a metal fence. You can't see what's going on the other side. You can't see anything. On the far back here, you see a regular fence. Now, if the regular fence remains and you replace it with this, now you can see through both items. You can see what's going on. Border Patrol can then stop people they see trying to climb it and knock it back, because that will be an actual deterrent to crossing of the country versus just a typical fence. Man, look how big those things are. That's crazy. Anyway, again, these are just my thoughts, my opinion on the whole idea. What do you think? I do believe we need the border wall. I do believe, and this again, I am what you would consider a liberal from years ago. I do believe we need the border. I do believe we need to focus on the poor and underprivileged of the U.S. population rather than accepting, millions upon millions of other people from other countries who we then try and help while still not helping the poor and underprivileged of our own nation. Anyway, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And that's about it. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.